You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
It's because you're in Russia.
Yeah.
And, like, you have proper cold out there, don't you?
Yeah, but not inside.
Yeah, not inside.
Inside it's baking in those places.
Do you guys have sauna out there quite a lot?
Not as much as I did, but yeah, you do have it once a month. But I used to do more, but once a month is enough.
Seriously, like, if I got a little bit of money,
Yeah,
the first thing I would do is build a sauna, like out here in the garden. I'd love a sauna.
yeah.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, welcome to the UK.
Thanks.
How's it feel?
Oh, good. I mean, I grew up here, so this is kind of home for me. Yeah, so it's good. It's good to catch up with a lot of people, see family, do all those things.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, I miss friends here. I got school, friends from school and what have you. I don't see them as much as I'd like to. So yeah, and that kind of hits home when you're here.
I've got no friends from school I'm in touch with.
Yeah.
I'm barely no mates.
Yeah, no, my best friend I've known since I was about 5.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
That's quite nice.
it is. It's amazing. And our kids are friends now as well, which is really the icing on the cake.
Oh wow, that is actually incredible. So
Yeah.
the thing is, because I was moving school so much as a kid, I never really got to like form those really strong relationships. I went to Greenfield Primary School, then Drummoyne Primary School, Kelvinside, and then Jordan Hill. So there's 4 different schools I went to.
Yeah.
And every single time we were also moving area. So it's just like, that was it. Bye-bye any of your school friends. And you had to start all over again. And
Yeah.
when you start in a new school, people have already got friendship circles and cliques, and it's just really hard to break in. So I always felt like the outsider,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Whereas my kids don't. They've been to the same school and the same classroom with the same friends. And I look at them and I think, wow, it's such a different life that they've got
Yeah.
compared to the one. Mine was very disruptive.
But it's more challenging, and it'll make you stronger at the end of the day, right? Knowing that you have to keep adjusting to environments.
What doesn't kill you
Exactly.
makes you stronger.
Exactly.
Anyway, what are we going to talk about today, buddy?
Oh, we can talk about anything you like. We can talk about Trump, I guess, is something we should talk about. We should talk maybe about reform a bit.
Okay.
Those things, big picture again.
Well, listen, I've been told by a few people recently, one of my supporters, Ahmed, stop being so negative, and having a go, having guests on who are bashing Trump and reform. We need a bit of hope. These guys are doing something. They're not all controlled opposition. They're waking people up. These are all good points. So, like, should we give these guys all the benefit of the doubt? Are these guys, the good guys? Should we support them?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So that's the hope. That's the hope out the window. But the reality of the system is the system always puts forward choices that the system wants for you. So if you're given a choice of A and B, both A and B will be bad for you, and you're given a relative which is worse.
But then why would they wake them up?
I don't know if they really are waking them up, because what you're seeing already with Trump is say one thing, do another, which is the classic political thing. So he's, make America great, America first. What's he doing? The first thing he's talking about annexing Canada, going to Greenland. Whoa, where's America first and all this? It was meant to be like reel America's neck in and focus on the domestic problems that you've got, and he's doing the exact opposite. Is that waking people up? I mean, it's the classic political tell people what they want to hear and then do whatever you were planning to do anyway. So yes, they all say things that people want to hear. That's why they get voted into office. But when it comes to actually delivering, it's a completely different story. So I'm not going to celebrate a guy telling me things I want to hear.
Yeah, I'm going to read out something. One of the things that this supporter said to me, I actually ended up writing a post saying, let's talk about controlled opposition. And they had a question, So my question is, why? with the global cabal have put all these people in place when they've been responsible for stirring a mass awakening, the like of which has never been seen before in modern history? Anyway, this is the one question that I've been waiting for you to ask these anti-Trump guests on your podcast, but it never comes. Actually, when Richard Jeffs challenged you with the question, you seemingly had to concede that people like Elon Musk and Trump have been so off message at times that it makes no sense why the WEF would have placed these people in the field. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the real answer is they're offering you a slightly different flavor of tyranny. That's so there could be a different side, but if you start thinking about the hard left and technocracy, which is really what Trump represents, there's actually not much difference between those two things. So, you know, the hard left is consolidation of complete power in the state and crushing the individual through collectivization. Technocracy, which I think is Trump's real agenda, which is actually the agenda of the people behind him, the Musks and the Peter Thiels, that is the same. It's complete concentration of power, but in a technocratic priesthood, which stroke the state as well, and also at the same time crushing of individual liberty. And if you look at technocracy, that's what it's all about. It's about giving people individual credits for energy, essentially. So it's a very communistic system. So you're just being offered different flavors of tyranny, and almost nobody is awake to that, by the way. So. Yeah. And I don't blame them for not being awake to that, because all of us have been taken in at some point in time by these guys, and you know they are brilliant salesmen stroke con artists. So yes. I've been taken in by Trump. You know, if you drank the Trump Kool-Aid, which I did, you've every right to be upset by someone like me coming on and saying, well, actually, he's not going to make things better because he's in a different club, but it's a club that will also oppress you.
Isn't it a case of, it goes back to that saying, it's easier to fool someone than admit that they've been fooled, than get them to admit that they've been fooled. Like, no one wants to be admit that they've fallen for it. Yeah. And like, you know, I drank the Trump Kool-Aid, MAGA in 2016. Yeah. But now I'm like, no. Yeah. And it's like, but the problem is, once people get invested in something, they find it very difficult to back out. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense.
But can I read? I want to read this post by someone on X, which I just love. The Joe Rogan experience is a present-day example, she writes, of Operation Mockingbird. Okay, it's just.a.thought, by the way, if anybody wants to follow this person. Operation Mockingbird is a tool of the state/forward/intelligence agencies presented to the masses as the podcast of a down-to-earth dude just asking some questions. Its purpose is to manage the image of characters on the world stage, release disclosures, controlled narratives and counter-narratives, and manipulate the minds of millions. The MSM went under a controlled demolition years ago to herd its viewers into other forms of media which can be further surveyed, tracked. But the owners never changed, and the goal remained the same as always: control the population. We are only allowed to see what those owners want us to see, so that we think what they want us to think. And she puts up pictures of Trump, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's podcast, and goes, you know, before you respond, look, I'm not a liberal, I don't watch MSN, but just think about these people. A $250 million show hosting world leaders and tech billionaires isn't just a podcast. I think she's making a good point.
Yeah, completely. I'm not sure to what extent MSN was a controlled demolition, you know, versus an organic change. But in any event, the guys who run the show are going to hedge their bets and make sure they run alternative media so it never does become alternative. You know, obviously, if they've invested, I mean, hundreds of years, let's say, in controlling MSM, they're not going to be asleep at the wheel when a whole new structure turns up. They're not going to be outmaneuvered in that way. So they will grab control. And if you look at the sort of circle around Trump and you link it back to PayPal, you see when all of those people start going out of PayPal, they end up in YouTube, in Rumble, in Substack, in BuzzFeed. That group, you know, if you define it reasonably widely, covers everything in alternative media. So, you know, that you can link them all back essentially to PayPal. That group has gone out and controlled alternative media more or less completely. So they're all invested to various degrees in these different entities. There's nothing that's independent of that group at the moment.
So it's you know, in the past you had mainstream media, legacy media, and then you had alternative media.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not think what we've got now is mainstream alternative media?
100%, yeah. It's very much that way because...
Apart from you and me.
Yeah, I mean,
And a handful of others.
and look at the reach we can get. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not Joe Rogan, it's not Russell Brand, and it never probably will be. You know.
I just had another video cancelled from YouTube.
Yeah.
It automatically uploads on Substack. And this is, you know, a lady talking about dating in lockdown. And dude, there was nothing controversial. And it was just taken down. And I just think, how can these other names, like you said, other platforms, maintain their channels? What the hell?
Well, I mean, success on social media is the red flag for controlled opposition. If you're on YouTube and you get these, like, I think I did a video about Russell Brand, was a completely fake takedown because he wasn't actually taken down. They fiddled a bit with his account on YouTube. They did nothing on Rumble, but he's still on both platforms with a bigger audience than he had before this takedown, in inverted commas. But when you and me get taken down, we just switch the computer on and it's gone.
We're gone.
It's gone. There's no discussion. There's no toing and froing. Nobody pays any attention to what's happening to us. And it's just deleted, or the whole channel's gone. And that's how it works in reality. So the other stuff is all theater to create the impression of dissent. But yeah, it's not dissent. It's very much kind of on message when it needs to be.
I want to come back to some of the things like Trump, Elon Musk, you know, all these people, and Reform Party. But before we do, you know, what I would say about this whole controlled opposition, I think a lot of the infighting of controlled opposition is actually garbage. It's just egos amongst the personalities, okay? I think the real controlled opposition is very, very subtle. I mean, these people, it's a mind war. And what I mean by that is the people in charge are constantly crafting a play, a TV show. We are in the Truman Show. Like, you know, everything we see is just fake. It's all theater, actors, it's all narratives. And that people say to me, oh, but you know what? You know, Trump is so different from Kamala and like they're so anti. And it's like, no. You don't understand. Superficially, we are given snippets of things and we are made to fight amongst each other, like, you know, the left, right wing paradigm. But, you know, it's all fake. It's all theatrics. And it's like when you sail a boat, you tack against the wind.
Yeah.
And the boat is pointing port, then starboard port. And it looks like it's going the opposite direction. But actually, when you follow the boat, it's going in the one direction.
Yeah.
Its destination is the same. So although at times it looked like the boat is going in a different way, the end destination is always the same. And so this whole left, right that we see, it's all superficial. Ultimately, it's all going in the same direction. And then what also the controllers do is they're very smart. They know they can push you along one narrative for only a certain amount of time before people start getting a bit bored of it. People then start questioning it, and then people stop engaging with it. And they don't want that. They want you engaged. They want you playing at the casino, at the table. They don't want you to walk away. So what they do is they push you as far as they can and then force you to go the opposite direction, force you as far as you can on that line, then swing you back again. And like the boat, you're tacking. You're going this way, then that way, this way and that way. But the end destination, the core thing, they're always sending you down a single path. And so this illusion of choice is just ridiculous. And then the other reason why they have this controlled opposition is they never want any organic, genuine opposition and free ideas arising to challenge their authority and position. So what they do is they get ahead of the curve and go, well, these guys are going to get pissed off with what we're doing. So why don't we create an alternative to lead people away, but actually it's going to tack back to our destination. So they're always one step ahead. They're always ahead of the curve. And we think, oh, we are in charge. We know what we're doing. Actually, no, they're manipulating us all the time. Isn't that what's happening?
That's 100% what's happening, and there's so many examples you can illustrate. But
Show me.
one I like is a political action committee in the US. It's called a pack. I can't remember the name of the pack, but it's the crypto bros. So it's Andreessen, Horowitz, and a bunch of other guys, Winklevoss brothers, a bunch of those guys. They've put in, I don't know how many tens or even hundreds of millions into this pack. It invests in Democrat, Republican, exactly 50-50. And it just chooses the Democrat or the Republican who's committed to cryptocurrency. They don't care which party that person is in, as long as they get an undertaking that this guy's going to push crypto. And that's the right way to look at politics. So yeah, the average guy in the streets out there waving his red flag or his blue flag, thinking they're standing for like labor rights versus free markets versus whatever. But the cynical guys at the top of the tree see this as, we want our agenda item delivered, and we don't care whether the guy's got a blue flag or a red flag or any other flag. We will invest in both sides simultaneously and choose the guy that delivers our agenda. And that it's literally 50-50 is how the funding of that pack works. It's mind-blowing when you begin to understand it.
And the ultimate example is actually, do you not think communism and crony capitalism?
Yeah.
Both funded by the same people.
Yeah.
Both ultimately about central bank.
Yeah.
About top-down control, centralization,
Yeah.
and complete dominance of the population,
Yeah.
with a little technocratic ruling elite.
Yeah.
I mean, they appear
Totally different.
totally different,
but they're identical. The only difference, and that's kind of why I started off with that ultimately they're the same. It's a consolidation of power and money in a small elite. And the only difference I can think of between them is the left side wants to create a lot of victim groups that then have to go to the government and ask, give the government more power to socially engineer these victim groups. So they push obviously on the LGBT agenda, the race card, oppression of women, all of those victim groups. And that's the only difference between the sort of left side and the crony capitalism stroke technocracy. That's the only difference between those agendas. So I think you're right. They push you as far as they can with that whole diversity agenda. When people are puking it up, they offer you the solution. And that's the only one difference between those two systems that I can see.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think about Trump's team and who he's appointing on his new administration? Not just geopolitical, but, his health kind of team, the people that he's appointing there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, we joke with Bob Moran that when Hotez praises one of the Trump hires on the health team, I can't remember which one it was the lady who was on Fox News, when Hotez comes out and says, that's a good hire, you're being screwed again. It was just really hysterical, but yeah, it's kind of it's so un-MAGA, I think, all of those. And even the people that were still kind of pro-MAGA, the sort of Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, are already coming out and saying things that were like, well, that's not what I expected. So, Kennedy has spent, I've traced this through his Twitter feed. Every month he would put out somewhere, 5 or 6 very hard-hitting tweets saying mRNA vaccine is dangerous. And then in July 2024, it just stopped dead. Nothing, literally nothing. So it's obviously somebody has told this guy that, that you stop pushing that agenda and you now switch to this overall generic health, basically. And you see that narrative shift for him. Oh,
wow. I'm going to look it up on his timeline right now.
Yeah.
So
if you look up mRNA, something like that, you'll see from November 2020, he's warning about dangers of mRNA. Or you can look up COVID vaccine.
Yeah, he's saying things like, UK, don't make the same mistakes as FDA. mRNA vaccines are totally inappropriate for small children. Yeah.
And then in July 2024, it's the last time you'll see that. And you'll see one tweet since then where he just says, well, I'd prefer to see better disclosure, and that's all he said since July 24.
So you think they got to him?
Well, he's been told, somebody must have told him, you stop that narrative, because it's so consistent for so many years, 4 years.
Alex, listen, just stop it now. Look, Trump hasn't got into power yet.
Yeah.
Right? Listen.
Yeah.
He has to do this gently.
Okay.
Right? He can't come across as a crazy anti-vaxxer. First of all, he needed the votes, so he couldn't say that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, he's not saying it because he's not yet in power.
Yeah.
You need to give the guy a chance.
Just wait.
Just wait.
Yeah.
He's playing 7D chess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? He's playing 7D chess. It's all in hand.
Yeah.
Don't you think you're just being a bit unfair and being a bit impatient? Give the fella a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
What'd you say to that?
I would say to that, look at the companies the Trump gang have invested in. And you had that lady, I think Ruth, Jane Ruby, who's done that. And I've done it as well. And I've got it's behind the paywall at the moment, but I've got a complete map of all of the Trump crew investments split between mRNA technology, autonomous weapons system, and spyware. And you can see that whole network. And you look at the investments these guys have made in mRNA. You've got Vivek, who's heavily invested in it. His brother's invested in it. JD Vance is invested in it. Elon Musk went in, and during COVID, CureVac, he was going to do a joint venture for mRNA. So those guys are up to their ears in mRNA. Now, there's, to my money, no way in the world they will ever start digging under that COVID vaccine and come up with any kind of conclusions that will have a negative impact on their investments. And I think it's always follow the money, basically.
What do you think? So some people have said, oh, Jack Cruz was too gruff with that guy. Is it Casey Means? I can't remember. The guy, the brother and sister.
Yeah.
And Jack Cruz was doing a great job. He's like, look, why don't you just say, you say you got the ear of, RFK, that you were the one that made a deal between Trump and RFK. Apparently, I don't know if I got that right or not. But
yeah, that's right.
Why don't you just say, we're going to stop the mRNA shots? And he was like, no, we need a political thing. And Jack was livid. He was like, just, what the hell? Just say no.
Yeah.
No, but we need to look at the politics and, why Jack? Why should we stop Jack? He said Jack like a million times, and it was just so frustrating. And I was like, honestly, if I had any hair in my head, I'd tear it out.
Yeah.
Not the beard. Don't touch the beard. But basically, I was driving me nuts. How hard is it to now just say, we've got serious concerns, grave concerns about mRNA technology. It's not what we were promised it was. There's going to be a complete moratorium and halt. The signals are that it's very dangerous, and it will need investigations, if any. But this might be a dead donkey. We've got concerns. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
You've got a mandate. You're coming in as a new president.
Yeah.
You've won. You got all the popular vote. What's the problem? Why is it so hard to do that?
Yeah. Well, again, it's follow the money. Because his team is all invested in that, not only money-wise, but in the narrative as well. So, and if you step back again, like the really big picture of all of this is the new kids on the block are pharma and big tech. And they have essentially all of the money. They have all the market capitalization. That's the two biggest weighted sectors now in the stock market. So all the power is with them. They have the lobbying money. They're going to be pushing their agendas. So, not only have you got these guys being personally invested in pushing this, they've got their own money in it. And these companies tend to be the biggest kids on the block, and therefore the most amount of lobbying. There's just no way that these guys are going to come to an honest position on mRNA, as far as I'm concerned. And the guy you mentioned, I think it was William somebody, he's another guy. You start scratching at the surface, and it's all very weird. He came from nowhere. Suddenly a huge name on social media, Tucker Carlson interview, all of that stuff. And you look at his old post, there's almost nothing.
William who, sorry?
What was it? Was it Casey or
Casey,
something?
Casey Means and Callie Means.
Casey Means, yeah. You start looking at him, and his social media profile was kind of nothing. He said nothing about vaccines.
Then they wrote a book.
Bang.
Yeah, about health.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, and I think he's from a pharma lobbying group background, and
exactly.
out in DC and in the swamp.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh yeah, we need to eat healthy and not eat like Fruit Loops or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
well, what about vaccines and childhood vaccines? And there's no talk about that at all.
No, it's a narrative shift.
And he's that on Tucker and Joe Rogan out of the blue.
Yeah.
And all the big names, the real dissidents like Sukrit Bhakti, Thomas Binder, where are they?
Nowhere. No.
Why are they not coming?
Because they're real opposition. They will disrupt the system if they're given half.
If I went on Joe Rogan, I would speak for 4 hours and I'd have a lot to talk about. You know, Trump went on Joe Rogan for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And the one time he mentioned the vaccines, was, I know, Joe, you've got some issues with the vaccines, but, vaccines generally, they're good things. Look at the polio vaccine, great vaccine. And then he goes, oh, the poor people in Gaza, the children in Gaza. I was like, oh, he's going to talk about children in Gaza. They can't get the polio vaccine. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So forget the fact that they're being bombed and killed and there's a genocide going on, and forget about the mRNA tech and all the vaccine harms. The only thing you're going to say is polio vaccines are great, and isn't it a shame the kids in Gaza can't get it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then it was like, let's talk about MMA, fighting.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just a normal, regular guy, Joe. You guys should vote for me. I'm a cool guy. And he is funny.
Yeah.
He's funny.
They're brilliant, these guys. There's no way in the world they get to where they are without being brilliant at what they do. And what they do is distract you, sell you false narratives. They hit your emotional hot buttons is what they're very, very good at. And, and then garnering support. That's how they do it.
And the anti-woke stuff is great. Who would not be that? But like Elon Musk, he said on Joe Rogan, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm genuinely
Well, he tweeted mRNA vaccine is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You can look it up. That's there. So.
This is what I mean. So like they come on the show, they do nothing but platform these things that we're fundamentally against. They say a lot of good stuff. They say a lot of things you want to hear.
Yeah.
Like, against the wokeism agenda.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
So like they sound like they're on your team and they're cool and they're funny.
Yeah.
And it is like the dream team that's been presented to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't vote for this dream team, like, well, are you going to vote for Kamala?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
But it's like, why should we pick any of the choices being presented? My argument is, no, I'm not rejecting these guys in favor of Kamala. I'm rejecting both because I know that I'm being played whichever one I choose.
Yeah.
But then one of the things I get told is, well, what's the point then? Well, then there's no hope.
No,
and
that's
then,
not right.
So what do we say to that then?
We say there is enormous work going on at grassroots level, and everyone says, well, I've never heard of Heritage. I've never heard of David Curtin. I've never heard of Tek Kong. I've never heard of Liz Evans. Well, of course you haven't heard of those people. They will never, I wouldn't say never, but pretty well never be on mainstream media, but they are actually fighting for the people. Their cause is based on integrity and fighting for liberty and fighting against oppression, but you never hear about them. So the solution almost inevitably will never come to you from on a plate from the top down with a lot of funding behind it. I mean, Trump has somewhere about $1.3 billion of funding into his presidential campaign. Do you think that strings? That is 1.3 billion strings attached to that presidency already. So who is he going to be representing? So the solution will always be bottom up. And that means people, if they want a solution, they're going to have to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And there's a lot of that going on, but it's not a mass movement. Will it ever be a mass movement? I don't know. But that's what I say to anyone who says, well, where's my solution? Listen, mate, you're going to have to make your solution. You're going to have to call Heritage. You're going to have to call ADF. You're going to have to volunteer for HEART. You're going to have to volunteer for Medical Freedom Alliance. You're going to have to email me or you or anyone and say, listen, I want a solution. I've had enough of this tyranny. I want to protect the rights of my children and grandchildren. What do I need to do? That's your solution. It's not coming from the top down.
Dude, you tell it as it is. Absolutely. I love it because basically the problem is everybody wants someone to come and save them.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to get off their backside and do anything about it themselves.
Yeah.
That's the truth, mate.
That is the truth. I think it's been the truth for all of history, more or less. And it's a truth that's obviously used against us. And I think there have been times in history, I've started looking now at the Indian kind of liberation movement, which is, you know, an example of something that was grassroots that did.
We're talking about the Indian subcontinent.
Yeah, yeah. So they threw off, but an obvious oppressor for them, at least as far as they could see. The British Empire for them was an oppressor, and over 100 years they got their act together until they were politically big enough to say, okay, guys, the show's over. Let's do a peaceful transition. But there it's obvious, you know, the guys ruling them are a different color, speak a different language, and come from a different country. So it's pretty easy to motivate people there.
But if you listen to someone like Matthew Crawford, he goes, the Theosophical Society totally infiltrated the Indian opposition. And the leaders that were presented, like Jinnah and Gandhi, were actually all British agents, ultimately playing a script. I mean, it's like, it's a bit far-fetched to think that you're like, really? But he goes, just look at what happened. He goes, even now, actually, they're part of the empire.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we
That's
said,
very dark, but
no, but as we said on power, you know, the guys in power really understand power, and they will always nobble any kind of genuine opposition, you know, throughout history. So I'm not surprised the Indian sort of liberation movement was infiltrated. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. But ultimately, they did achieve a change. Okay, it's probably not as far as a lot of people in India would want it to go back then. But right now, they're kind of king of the hill. The Indian stock market's on fire. GDP's on fire. They are a global power. People go to them to negotiate with them. So, okay, quite a few years down the road, I would say India now is really a very powerful, independent country of its own. And we, as the UK, will have to go and kowtow to India. That's just the reality of geopolitics.
So what about Elon Musk now using this platform and telling, you know, the British government how to act and behave and all the stuff he's doing? I mean, he's doing good work exposing all the grooming gangs, isn't he?
That's a hard question, and the answer is yes and no, right? So yes, he is doing some good work in that, but no, I don't think that's really problem number one in the UK at the moment. I haven't looked through all the stats on that, but it's one of those, it's, you know, we remember how they manipulated the COVID stats, saying like this is 90% effective because it went from 0.0005 to 0.0049 or something, and that's what they're doing again with these stats. So
I mean, because I saw something on his feed saying 500,000 girls have been victims. I was like shocked.
Yeah,
that just sounded like a fantastical number. It's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's such an emotive issue. It's like massive hot button, right?
Yeah.
Me just saying, look, you want to calm down, I will now be accused of being a guy who supports raping young children.
Yes.
It's like, that's the way they put people into tribes and radicalize them. I do not, hey, everyone, I do not support raping young children. People that do this should be very severely punished. It's very clear also in the Bible. This is, you know, the ultimate sin that needs maximum punishment. So I don't support that at all.
I don't even think death is enough. I think castrating them and slow punishment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have specific things, but I do not support that. But at the same time, I don't support the whole country essentially being obsessed with a issue like this, because the latest figures are like, it should have been 3%. You know, if it was based on ethnic percentage in the population, but it's 6%. We're talking 3% of a very, very, thankfully, still very limited crime. So the overall,
so 3% what?
This is the percentage of population, say, for example, of Pakistani in the UK is somewhere about 3%. But they've just released some data in the Telegraph showing, oh, but they had a higher percentage of child sex offenders. But then it's only a very specific subgroup of offense, which is the grooming gang offense. So total child sex offending is about 117,000 offenses a year. And we're talking about a tiny, tiny subgroup of that. And then within that subgroup, one racial category is slightly overrepresented. So the scale of what you're talking about is not...
So who is doing most of the child grooming and child sex abuse?
It's roughly in line with ethnic breakdown that you have in the UK. There's some,
But on the social media, you get the impression
No,
it's
exactly.
all Pakistanis.
Exactly, and that's and it's a divide. I think, to me, yes, they're bringing more attention to this issue, which is great. But ultimately, what they're really doing is the classic divide and conquer. And as you said, they just flipped the script. So they've spent now.
Because this has been going on for 30, 40 years. What
Yeah.
I'm thinking is, why now?
Why now? And
now is this all coming out?
I think they've just flipped the script, like you were suggesting, that they spent 20 plus years oppressing the majority of people in Britain. So the diversity agenda has been really all about oppressing the majority,
Yes.
imposing minority views on the majority, making them angry, and basically a gun has been fired somewhere and said, okay, now you majority, now you go pick on some minorities and go and fight with them. And it's divide and conquer. They just flip the the oppressor and the oppressed over.
I never thought of that, and I think you're bang on. I thought they're distracting us from what's going on in Israel, and I thought another reason they're doing that was to promote this clash of civilization between Christians and Muslims. And you know what? Muslims, they're all rapists. They're all barbaric.
Yeah.
You know what? That justifies us bombing them. It justifies us doing regime change. Because you know what? They're not like us. We're better than them. So if we kill a few of them, who cares?
Yeah.
Good for them. I thought it was part of that agenda.
No, it can be both things at once.
But I didn't think of what you said, and I think actually you're on the money on that one as well.
Well, as I said, it can be both things at once. And the reason I say that is there was this, I think it's Almondsbury School or something, the original incident that Tommy Robinson ended up in prison for. I looked at it quite closely, and essentially nothing really major happened in that. A white British schoolboy poured water onto a Syrian schoolboy who was the son of refugees. And what happened is, like, pouring water onto someone in the scheme of what happens in schools in the UK every day is like kind of zero, basically.
Yes, who cares? Yeah.
Nobody's stabbed, nobody's hurt, nothing's broken, no fisticuffs even. And what happened was Piers Morgan radicalized the sort of pro-immigration group by calling that a waterboarding and a racist attack on a poor defenseless Syrian. And then what happened was Tommy Robinson, he didn't rectify Piers Morgan's misrepresentation. He just went the other way and said, actually, no, that Syrian lad is a girl beating, molesting, whatever, which is what he ended up in jail for because of defamation. So you've taken a non-incident, really, I mean, a small incident, and you've made it a massive red rag for two completely different tribes. And then, of course, the tribes ever since have been fighting each other over that thing, and neither tribe really knows what went on. And it's just like, they're angry, go fight. That's the way it operates.
But listen, let's be honest. Child grooming and child abuse doesn't happen outside of the Pakistani group, does it?
It does happen.
No, all these Catholic priests, they're all Pakistani Catholic priests, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it happens everywhere, and you can play a lot of games with this percentage is overrepresented, but it's at the margin.
Can I be honest with you? But there is a problem. I'll be honest with you. No joking aside, I'm going to tell you something. I've never said this online before. So basically, when I was about 6, I was coming back home from school, and in those days, guess what? You could go to school and back without your parents at that age. I would never dream of doing it now. I was there with my older sister and my younger brother. There's 3 of us, 5, 6, 7. We're all 1 year apart. We're coming home, and this lad, probably in his 20s, 30s now, if I think about it, but he was a man to me because I was a little kid. He goes, "Oh, hey guys, do you want to come and see my puppies?"
Yeah.
And we're like, "No."
Yeah.
Like, literally, you can shit up. Is that cliche?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, they're really cute. Come and see my puppies. And we're like, no, we're going home. Stop talking to us. And he's like, come on. And he picked me up.
Whoa.
And I kicked and screamed. And I remember my older sister screaming and he dropped me and ran away.
Yeah.
And that guy was white.
Yeah.
Black hair. I'll never forget. Black hair.
Yeah.
And, it was a big thing at school, and we talked about, this at school and how, don't ever do this. And there's another guy apparently going around with a pram as well. and he didn't have anybody in the pram, and there was, you know, concerns about this kind of stuff going on. And so I remember that I was a victim of that. Now, also, when I was 7 or 8, our parents sent us to a local Quran class to learn the Quran, like the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't our mosque, wasn't our cult. It was a different thing, but we didn't say that we were in this cult. We just went to that to learn the Quran.
Yeah.
And on the second day that we went, the guy who was running it said, "Oh, I want to teach you guys upstairs in my room. You guys are so pretty. You're so smart. You're special." And he tried to fondle me and my brother and sister.
Yeah.
And the next day we went to our mum and dad and went, "This guy took us in the room. We don't like him. He's a creep."
Yeah.
And my parents pulled us out of that Quran class.
Yeah.
He was a Pakistani.
Yeah.
Then the third thing that happened to me was when I was about 8 or 9, we were visiting Pakistan, my mum's sister's house, and there's some relative, I think, visiting, not our side. And we were in the garden. It's a huge garden. It's like 2 acres. We were playing with a ball, and the ball went into this shed. And I went to get the ball. I'm just a kid. I'm like 8 years old. Went in to get the shed. And this guy was there, and he picked me up and started trying groping me. And I kicked and screamed and ran out. And I was so embarrassed, I didn't know what to say. And I never said anything about it to my parents. So what I'm trying to say is, I have had experience now. 2 Pakistani people, 1 white person. Like, there are bad people out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I don't doubt for a second that there are these grooming gangs and they're happening.
Yeah.
And these bastards need to pay for it.
Yeah.
And if it is overrepresented in the Pakistani community, that also has to be investigated. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Yeah.
Why is no one from the community saying anything?
Yeah.
This needs to be looked into. And if they are targeting people who are not Pakistani, but specifically group of people like white girls or Sikh girls, that's also racist, and that needs to be investigated. What is happening? What is this cultural phenomenon that's going on?
Yeah.
However, having said all that, I'm worried about conflating it with Muslim gangs, Muslims, all Muslims are like this, and, you know, making it this clash of civilization and, you know, stirring up hatred like this, because it's like, well, actually, a lot of bad shit goes on everywhere. A lot of, like, in Belgium, there's a pedophile ring. I think they're all white there. The Catholic Church, they're all white. Like, they're Jimmy Savile. We could do this. But, you know, you don't hear Christian grooming gangs just because they're white Christian. You just hear Belgian grooming gang or whatever. So, like, yes, the fact that they're all Pakistani does make it, I think it needs to be mentioned. But, like, I think the labels are a bit, just blanket saying, "Oh, Muslim gang doing this." You know, I think we need to be careful. Like, I feel like we're being manipulated.
100%.
You know, there's something going on.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I may write something about this, because I actually was just yesterday looking at those statistics for 2024, and that's what I'm saying. It's at the margin, okay? And 100% agree with you. There is an issue here, but it's not the be all and end all that these guys make out. That if we just deport a handful of Pakistanis, then it's all plain sailing from here, which is absolute nonsense. You know, the majority by far of child sex offences are carried out, unfortunately, by white guys, because the majority of the population is
not
white.
because white guys are special or different or bad. It's just because they're the majority of the people.
So there's nothing more to say about that. You know,
90% of abuse, actually, correct me if I'm mistaken, is actually done by people who know the abuser, like typically a friend of the family or a family member.
Yeah, there's quite a few bits and pieces of statistics I haven't looked at, but that sounds about right.
Because I had to do child protection as a doctor when I was treating kids, and I remember that statistic again and again.
Yeah.
Most of the people in the abuse are known to the family, either in the family or friends of the family. Yeah,
that's as I remember, the biggest category is within the family, and it could be 90 if you add up. Then known to the individual who's
and by the way, I just want to clarify, I'm not like defending Muslims or Islam. Like, I'm not Muslim anymore for a reason. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in the religion. And, you know, there's one of two things that like really stood out for me were like, did that holy prophet really marry like a 9-year-old? Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck was that all about? Like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that they insist that girls cover themselves up. Like, nowhere in the Quran did I ever say you need to wear hijab or anything. It's a cultural thing. It's a whatever thing. There's things fundamentally in Islam I do not agree with. Like, I find, I don't want that. I don't want Sharia law in this country. I don't want, like, you come to this country, you adopt the values of this country. You don't import your values. These are the things that I believe in. But having said that, again, I just feel like there's a bit of stirring of the pot.
Completely.
Like, and I just feel like people like Elon Musk, some other, big prominent right wing kind of like social commentators, influencers, celebrities, politicians, they're kind of jumping onto this. And it's funny, they don't talk about Israel, they don't talk about Zionism, they don't talk about the ethnic cleansing in Gaza or whatever. They don't talk about the unhealthy influence of, the Israeli lobby in America or the UK government. They don't talk about that, but they'll talk about, Muslims and grooming gangs.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, and if we really wanted to get serious about grooming gangs and child sex offences, we'd talk about the 50% plus of births that take place outside marriage in the UK now, which was essentially nothing in 1950. So every child born, roughly speaking, plus minus in the 1950s, was born within a family structure with a mother and a father. That number today is less than half. So you've got, it's amazing. If you look at that chart,
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. It's a statistic that blew me away when I looked at it. And
this is a war in the family.
Yeah, they're born outside marriage. They're not married, the parents. So how many, hundreds of thousands of children do we have who don't have, they can be unmarried, but a sort of tight-knit family still, of course, but how many hundreds of thousands have we got who are born and they're not married, and they're also not a tight-knit family, the father's not there.
Okay, I'm going to say something controversial. See, this is going to get me into trouble. So these kids that are being groomed, definitely they're prey to these evil.
Mm-hmm.
But, where are their families? Like, how are they becoming victims and being lured into drugs and everything? If you have a nice, warm, healthy family unit, with love from both parents, you're not going to go out to some sleazy taxi driver or some kebab shop owner. Am I right?
You're right. And
I know that's, I'm not, and look, some people are going to be like, oh, you're blaming the children. No, I'm not. No, I'm not actually.
You're questioning where is the family structure to prevent this.
Thank you. I'm not blaming the children are always the victims.
Yeah.
Let me make this clear. The children are victims, and whoever these people are that are grooming them and raping them, honestly, painful death as far as I'm concerned, right? Like no deportation, no jail time. Sorry, painful death is what I think. But what I'm trying to say is to protect the kids, right? Why are they being put into this position where they're being vulnerably exploited by these people? Like if my daughter, I would be angry with myself. Like, why has my daughter gone to this sleazy taxi driver or kebab shop owner or whatever? Like, where have I failed her? Yeah. That's a question. Like, where's the family?
Yeah, that's the big question, and that takes me to that statistic that more than half of children are born outside marriage. That's a huge question, and then that takes me to another question of like religion and where is this progressive agenda going? Because all of these things tie together. So what's happened to society from the 1950s or say the 1960s? A lot of those indicators have all moved in one direction at a time where we've started to implement this progressive agenda. And as that's happened, Christianity has retreated as well in the UK. And to me, those things all link together. And, that's why I'm beginning to think that without Christianity, you're always going to struggle to have a decent society. I think what we're seeing now is a symptom of the fact that we've more or less abandoned Christianity. Now, in the 2021 census, less than half of people said they were Christian.
And it's also, like, I agree, like those Christian values we were talking about conservative, social, cultural values.
Yeah.
Like just respect and honor and family.
Yeah.
You know, these basic
Yeah.
things have gone at, and on honesty,
Yeah.
integrity.
Yeah. Completely gone.
They've just gone.
Yeah.
You know, like they've gone, and you can see that. Forget child grooming or whatever. Just like dealing with people in life, dealing with tradespeople, dealing with your doctor.
Yeah.
Is your doctor honest now?
Yeah.
Is your doctor giving you informed consent? Is your doctor prioritizing you as they should do? Or are they prioritizing their license and their reputation? Or, you know, just dealing with anybody. Like, I find that what's happening is so many people are just lying to themselves. And when they lie to themselves, they get used to lying about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, you know what? I lie that I'm happy in this relationship. I lie that I'm a good parent. I lie that I like my job. I lie that I get on with my boss. I lie that my government takes care of me. I lie that this shot is safe and effective. Yeah. And they just keep lying. They keep lying. Yeah. Yeah. And we're just in this society where I think too many people are living a lie and lack good ethical, moral values.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. You know, lack of religion is part. And that's why I'm conflicted in the sense that I don't believe in any religion. I think every religion is co-opted and captured. Yeah. But at the same time, the alternative is to have no religion. Yeah. And I balk at that. And I think, oh my God, that's a disaster. Don't want that.
You'll never have no religion. And I learned this from speaking to a guy called Reverend Joe Boot, that when Christianity retreats, it's not replaced by secular utopia. It's replaced by neo-paganism. Yeah. And when you start really looking at the climate cult, it is a cult. It's the core believers of climate alarmism are in a cult, and they are worshipping Gaia. That's what they're doing. That is neo-paganism. And you have that with the science as well. You know, I think a lot of these Musk guys, they have these phenomenal beliefs about AI, that AI is some kind of new deity. They're even on record saying that they want to cheat death. So they want to be uploaded to the cyber world, and we're all going to live in this virtual world. These are all kind of quasi-religious beliefs that these guys have. And of course, the left...
I actually think they believe it.
I do think they believe it. And I think they need to believe it because you need to believe something. If you don't believe the Bible anymore, you're going to believe something else. And that something else is going to be destructive, especially compared to Christianity. And I think for a lot of the LGBT people, they're also in a cult. The way, you know, they will oppress anybody who's not in that cult. They've got their own flag. They've got their own meetings. They've got their own symbols and all of those things.
They should have a country. LGBTQ Tistan.
Or something. I don't know. I think, as far as I know, a lot of the actual genuine LGBT community do not support this in your face.
Yeah, exactly.
Flag waving, laws, you must bow down to the LGBT cult. They know it's creating a backlash, which actually is negative for them. So it's not, it doesn't work in the sense it doesn't make people more accepting, and it doesn't create a cohesive society. It creates a fractured society with a lot of friction in it.
Yep. All right, okay. So you mentioned a couple of political parties, the Heritage Party and everything. Dude, the big one. Don't you support the Reform Party? Come on.
They've
got 180,000 new members. They've overtaken the Conservative Party. They're going to soon overtake the Labour Party. Even Elon Musk was boasting about one of them. I mean, what's the guy's name? I can't remember now. But anyway, he was saying, "Oh, this guy would make a great new leader instead of Nigel Farage." Yeah. Like they're being pushed everywhere you look. They're the new hope. Yeah. In Star Wars, the new hope. Aren't you on board?
I am so not on board.
Why?
It's again, if you do the tiniest bit of due diligence on any of these characters.
Dude, can you please just drink some of that hopium? Like, come on, just drink some of the hopium. Yeah. Just doom and gloom buster.
No. But truth is the hope. When you actually understand how things work, it does give you enormous hope. And as I said, when you meet those real grassroots people, that's where the hope is. So the hope is enormous, but it's not with the false idols. And, do not put your trust in princes. Reform are princes. If you do the tiniest scratch of anything of due diligence of what these guys do, Okay.
So explain it, because a lot
Not
of people are
what
listening.
they say. Okay, so let's go Rupert Lowe, right? You said don't mention the names, but he is the guy you're talking about who Musk has praised.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. That's the guy.
That's the guy. He set up a company called Kona Energy. The purpose of that company is to deliver a net zero future.
Oh.
Oh.
How'd you spell the name?
Kona Energy.
All right. Okay. Kona Energy.
Yeah. And so he is fronting up this party whose only shtick is get rid of immigrants and get rid of net zero, net stupid. But at the same time, the guy set up a business to capitalize on net zero.
I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Kona Energy, delivering the zero carbon future. Holy frack.
Yeah.
He's behind it?
Yeah. He was the majority shareholder.
It's one of the UK's leading clean energy development companies. But we don't believe in this garbage, do we?
No, apparently not.
What is battery storage? Oh my God, they're doing battery storage.
Yeah, because
wind
that's what you
farms?
need. Yeah, exactly. For wind and solar farms.
Rupert Lowe, MP, investor.
Yeah, yeah. And majority shareholder up until sometime in 2020, I don't remember which one, 3 or 4 or somewhere.
Delivering the zero carbon future.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so, but that's, that's just one thing, for example, if anyone bothered to check, which they don't. And also, I think it's important that the media never reports on this, and that's an open goal.
Any more examples?
Well, the real example...
You're right, because that's
an open goal.
It's an open
Why
goal.
does nobody report that? It's like, why? It's like, it's a murder again. There's silence on that issue because you can't touch the net zero issue.
Is Reform actively saying anything against net zero?
Yeah, they every day net zero, net stupid.
Are you serious?
That's the catchphrase, isn't it?
Yeah, UK's Reform Party's denial of climate change.
Yeah. And he himself called it nonsense. Rupert Lowe called it nonsense while setting up a company to capitalize on that. So, but in a way, that's small beer compared to what they did during COVID.
Okay, we'll talk about that then.
Yeah. I mean, COVID is when the masks came off and we saw the tyrants versus the people that actually believed in very, very fundamental principles of individual liberty. Tice, they must be vaccinated when it came to care home workers. Farage, get Blair onto the vaccination program.
Okay, let's stop there for a second,
Yeah.
but hold that thread because I like where it's going.
Yeah.
When he said that, when he brought a picture of like who looked like Gollum, Tony Blair at the time, long straggly hair. He said this guy should be head of the vaccine. I was like, what the frack?
Yeah.
I thought this guy was your enemy. I
Yeah.
thought this guy was the opposition.
Yeah.
How of all people in the world could you be recommending this guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was shocking.
But we knew what it meant was not actually vaccination. It meant vaccine passports. That's always been Blair's agenda for 20 years.
Digital ID.
Digital ID. And that's like, so if you're putting Blair in charge, you are greenlighting digital ID and through vaccine passports. That's what made that recommendation like a double jaw-dropping event for me. But people just brush it off because, as you said, at some point they buy in, they drink the Kool-Aid.
He's my savior. My savior is going to save me.
Exactly. And there's nothing you can do to people who have drunk the Kool-Aid. To anything you demonstrate to them will just completely bounce off. It's hopeless.
So what else in the COVID era? So you got
Tice saying they must be. Also, Tice then turned around in an interview, and we were talking about controlled opposition in the UK, the platform. On GB News, he turned around and said, "No, I was always for choice." And the GB News presenter just said, "Yes, that's right." And it's like, no, hang on, whoa. He's literally on record saying they must be vaccinated in connection with the care home workers. But the GB News guy just let it pass. And it's like, as you said, you give the people a hose down, you wash off the tyranny, spray a bit of perfume, and he's your new libertarian hero. That's what these channels do quite a lot.
They do. They rinse you.
Yeah, they give you a nice rinse off, like Zuckerberg had a hose down.
We'll come to that in a second. But I've just found an article on 5th of January 2021. Nigel Farage backs Tony Blair to lead Britain's vaccination programme during dig at low-grade government. And you can see him there, a little screenshot. How? adding the former Labour Prime Minister commands respect and is seriously bright. Are you kidding me? Like, how could you do that?
Yeah. It's a big club. And we ain't in it. And
this is desperately sad. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage, 6th of January 2021. Here's a video. Why did I back Tony Blair? And the comments, putting your trust in a man responsible for the deaths of thousands of innocent people is a bad call on your behalf, Nigel.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, like you said, it just goes to show that they're all part of the same club, isn't it?
Yeah. Because the key thing is we have politicians who you'll never hear about. Like you mentioned those names, Wes Bakti, Wes Yaden, nobody knows, nobody's heard of them. But we had politicians like David Curtin who day one were like, this is dead wrong. And if we ran a proper meritocracy, we would want those people in power.
Right.
But we don't. They're still invisible. And we have the guys that pushed the agenda, who got hosed off. They are the new saviors, although they pushed all of the COVID tyranny.
Where was the reform team when it came to lockdowns and mandates? I never heard anything from them.
Do
you remember how funny it was that you never heard?
They did a couple of half-baked things so that they could then say years down the road, oh, we did something. But as you said, it's so low-key, and he was there banging the pots for the NHS. He's there in a video rolling up his sleeve, getting his jab.
This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When it came to upholding, freedom and our liberties, like, they weren't really fighting our fight. They're very quiet for a very long time. They kind of disappeared. Nigel Farage became a pundit. They all disappeared.
Yeah.
And then when things started to lift, suddenly they came back. And then even then they didn't really talk that much about vaccine harms, but now slowly, reluctantly. So some people say, oh, well, you can't blame people who are now slowly waking up. I'm like, no, but the way it works is...
You should.
Yeah. Say that again?
You can and you should.
Why?
Because that was the Milgram experiment. We had, the first time maybe in history, a real-life Milgram experiment. Every one of those...
Say it.
Every one of those bastards came out and pushed the agenda. Every one of them. And the other hero of reform, actually... The other two heroes of reform, so one of them, Lee Anderson, he voted, because he was at some other party then, which he switched also God knows how many times. He voted for compulsory vaccination of care home workers.
Did he?
He did. And he voted for all kinds of other authoritarian legislation in the past.
I'm not talking about just here in the UK. We're talking about people around the world. We're talking about even the doctors. We're talking about everybody who pushed the jab and is now slowly coming out going, oh, well, maybe it wasn't right. So I'll give an example, right? So I did a tweet on this. I want to read it out properly so I don't get it wrong. I said, here we go. I want to get this right because this is important. I predict that one day the very doctors, and we could say politicians, celebrities, everybody, we can lump them all in, okay?
Yeah.
That either pushed the mRNA jab or remain silent despite the overwhelming evidence of harm, will one day do a 180-degree U-turn, and they'll be celebrated for the shining light that they're doing on the wrongs that were done. They will whitewash the evil. They will say that mistakes were made. They will say that lessons need to be learned, that we need to forgive, that, we need the truth and reconciliation.
Build a movement by bringing people in, we need to celebrate.
Yeah, exactly. While the early dissident doctors who were sidelined, who were cancelled, who were punished, locked up, lost their livelihoods, they will gain no attention.
Yeah.
Never mind being championed for being the real ethical and scientific critical thinkers that they were, like Thomas Binder, Sukrit Bhakti, Dr. Jerry Waters, Dr. Anne McCloskey, Dr. Stephen Frost, myself, Ian McDermott, Sam White, David Cartland, Dr. Kimberly Biss, Dr. Jack Cruz, Dr. Mary Bowden, Dr. Lupus, Anastasia Lupus, and so many of the doctors. You'll never hear them. You'll never hear me being invited to a meeting or, a presentation of, these people. No, you'll hear all the ones that pushed it or stayed quiet Now they're the ones coming. Like there's a guy that pushed it, wrote Daily Mail articles saying, "Oh, you should take the COVID shot." Now he's a prominent guest around the world saying, "Oh yeah, these are bad." And I've said right from the beginning that these, I was worried about these things, and it's like, really, you're writing articles. You told me you were coerced by the Daily Mail, but you know what? This is how it works. The good guys get totally silenced, get no airtime, get no recognition. And I'm not saying we want fame and money or anything. No. But what I'm trying to say is, can't you see how the system works? The very people who went along and played the game, now, they're being promoted. And you just need to look at Trump's new administration. People like Dr. Oz.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of them.
Dude, what the... And there's just one of them.
Who's the lady? Who's the Fox News lady? I can't
remember the name. But I mean, like, why are these people? Like, is America short of doctors who were dissidents, who were right on the money, who knew when to stand up for medical ethics and informed consent and bodily autonomy? The people who were shouting out right from day one, who called it right, who should be recognized for that fact. Where the hell are they in the administration?
They're nowhere because...
Hi, me again. You're listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or on his Substack, or simply buy him a coffee with one of the donation links which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Power does not want people with integrity in any position of authority. You have to understand that, because people with authority will not take the wad of cash and stick it in the back pocket. They will not take the expense trip.
No, because people of authority, people with integrity.
Yeah, with integrity, sorry. Well, nobody with integrity will have a position of authority.
Yes.
Because they cannot be manipulated so easily. Therefore, the system will always filter those people out. They don't want people with integrity anywhere in positions of power. They want hucksters, charlatans, liars, pedophiles, narcissists, drug takers, whoever they can get, who can be bought off in whatever poison that they like to take, money, children, whatever they want. That's who they want in power, and that's the curse of our system, because those people can often talk a great game. Like we said before, they will hit the emotional hot buttons. They will garner support. They talk a good game, and that's who a lot of the herd will go after, because they talk a good game and they're prepared to ignore what these guys actually do. And such a simple rule, judge a person based on what they've done. It's so simple. Nobody does it.
That was really good, Ran. Dude, that was epic. So epic. And you nailed it, my friend. At the end of the day, you know what? They're all con artists. And they are good. They are so good.
Yeah.
But these are con artists that are conning you. Of course you don't think they're con artists, because they'd be pretty crap con artists if you knew they were con artists.
Yeah.
But they're smooth. They know how to talk. They know how to say the right things.
Yeah.
They know how to make you fall in love with them.
Yeah.
This is how they play the game.
Yeah.
And sadly, quite often, the really good people
fall for it.
Yeah. No, but the really good people who are right about things either don't want the limelight, aren't very good at articulating themselves, don't know how to manipulate people. They're just honest, decent, good people.
Yeah.
And they don't get the following, they don't get the recognition, and they never get promoted into these positions, like you said, because they're incorruptible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most good people will fall for the bad people.
Yeah.
How do we break that cycle?
I don't think we ever will break that cycle. It does feel like a part of the human condition that people, the herd especially, will chase after charlatans. It's just human history, right? That's why politics is stuffed full of charlatans, as you said, for all of the reasons you gave. And I don't think it can be solved. I'm thinking now it's always going to be a minority. Maybe, let's say minority can grow from like 4% to 8%. That would be already a big deal. I think that's kind of the trajectory we're on. We're not it's never going to be like 60% of everyone's like awake to all this stuff and we're all going to fight the good fight with integrity. It's just, I can't see it happening. But we can move the needle to get more people understanding how corrupt the system is and how the people at the top are devious and that many of them are compromised. If more people understood that, that's already a step in the right direction.
Oh man. So this whole pivot, like from Maha, from talking about real things that are really important right now, the vaccine injuries, childhood vaccine schedule, autism, mRNA jabs, to now food and sugar. And even then it's like, oh, but we need to just clearly label. I mean, even then it's watered down. It's not like we're going to stop canola oil and rapeseed oil and fructose corn syrup and all this garbage and stop poisoning. You know, the Trump is in an airplane with RFK and Elon Musk having McDonald's and Coca-Cola. It's like,
it's a trolling.
It's trolling us. It's mocking us. But also what I found was that the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, is more like instead of America First policy, it's like Israel First policy.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? Like all the appointees are like Zionist war hawks and it's just like, can no one see this?
I think that is one thing we're talking about waking up, but that's something people have really woken up to in a much bigger way, at least over the last 5 years. So again, it's like the first time this really came out in a serious way was 2006. There's a paper by Walt and Mearsheimer, who are two, top shelf foreign policy professors who it's about a 30-page thing about the Israeli lobby and its influence over US foreign policy. When that came out, it was a storm.
And we're talking about AIPAC, aren't we?
Yeah, we're talking about AIPAC and all it is many more bows to that string. They came out and said in 2006, and that was a huge storm, but in a very narrow foreign policy circle. And they got a lot of heat for writing that paper. And then it's taken us the best part of 20 years.
Didn't they write a book as well about it?
They wrote a book as well about it, yeah. I've read the paper. I haven't read the book. And it's taken us 20 years for that to seep out. And what I've noticed is there's an organization on social media that tracks how much money each politician has taken from the lobby. And whenever that politician says anything, they just put the dollar amount you have taken, X from the lobby, and it's a fantastic little thing. Whoever's running it, I don't know.
What website is that?
It's something like it's I can't remember what the website's called, but if you look at a US politician, you'll see this, like, they're always red and the writing's always in white. It tells you exactly how much money that person has taken from the lobby.
And I've heard that they've all got their own AIPAC handlers, every congressman and Senate, and they get told speaking points. And they ring them up regularly and check on them. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, that was the Thomas Massey interview, right? Everybody has a handler except for me. And that organization that has done that red and white, the amounts that they've taken, they've done a map as well of, I don't remember which house, it could be both houses, but these are the dots in black who have taken the money, and these are the ones that haven't, and it's like the whole thing is black. But there's like 3 or 4 Democrats and 9 or 10 Republicans who haven't taken the money. That's literally how small it is.
So a lot of Americans would say, well, Israel First aligns with America First, and that we've got the same values and their democracy and their interests are our interests.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Can you be? Some people have even gone as far as saying that questioning your loyalty makes you anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well, that's always the way people deal with dissent. You smear.
Because I, by the way, like, I'm loyal to this country.
Yeah.
Like no one else.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to be loyal to any other country. This is my country.
Yeah. No. That's agreed. And also when you're allied with somebody, you can't give a blanket like, yes, we're with them, and that's all there is to it, forever and ever, amen. There's times when probably you are very closely aligned with Israel and you do want to support them militarily, or you want some kind of deal over weapons or intelligence sharing. Sure, there can be decades of that happening, but then they kind of step over the line and you have to say, well, actually, we're not aligned on this issue. We're not like giving blanket carte blanche endorsement for what they're doing. And that's the issue. Like when you've taken the money, you're expected to give carte blanche endorsement forever, and that's the problem, I think, for the U.S. foreign policy.
I've got some Jewish friends, and they're telling me that the Trump is actually going to be pushing a third temple, and that's why he's supported so much by the Zionist lobby. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, I mean, his pick for the Department of Defense is, as I understand it, a Third Templar. And for those, I only recently found out what all this stuff means. But as far as I understand,
it's end times prophecy.
It's end times prophecy.
Can you just explain it? Because I've only just recently gone into it. I'd love you to explain it, though.
Well, I'm no expert, but I read a Chabad piece about this. So,
yes. So who's Chabad?
So Chabad is a branch of Judaism. I think it's one of the more radical branches that that also has sub branches within it. So it's very confusing, and most of that's very, very closed. It's not really open to any non-Jewish people. But
Putin was brought up in a Chabad house, wasn't he? Or something
I haven't heard that. I'm sure they will have tried to influence in some way, but I don't know what the exact score is on that. But the prophecy is, as from memory, that the Messiah has not come yet. There will be a Messiah to come. And that Messiah will essentially be a person. They won't be divine. And they will be descended from the house of David. And they will turn up once the third temple is built. And the world at that point will be run by that Messiah in Jerusalem. So that's I could be wrong on some details, but that's my, from memory, rendition of what that prophecy is. And I think a lot of people actually believe that. So certainly the radical Zionists believe that. So that is why the Third Temple is important. And that is why putting a guy who's a Third Templar in charge of the US military is probably not a good idea, because they're going to be influenced by these prophetic kind of messianic predictions. And that's a very, very bad idea to put someone in charge of that military with those ideas.
Yeah. I mean, because they're being driven by these weird ideological beliefs. But anyway, to Trump, right? Sorry, Putin. So, Russia's chief rabbi is Rabbi Beryl Lazar.
Mm-hmm.
You heard of him?
No.
He's often referred to as Putin's rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
And he told this story about the Russian leader. He goes, when he was a young child, he grew up in a very poor family. His parents were always at work. He was fortunate that the next door neighbor was a Hasidic Jewish family, and they always made sure to invite him over. They were extremely kind to him, and he realized that not only were they kind to a child that wasn't theirs, not only were they kind to a child that wasn't Jewish, but they were kind to a child in a time and place when it was dangerous to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Putin apparently is very close to this Chabad like network and everything. That's what I've heard. Stuff like that.
Yeah, but they have been pretty unfriendly towards Russia recently. So there's been, at least outwardly, a lot of disagreements over a lot of things. So I'm not sure how much what he does today is influenced by that.
Really?
Yeah, I see a lot of misalignment over Palestine, for example. So Russia was certainly pushing pro-Palestinian rights for a long time, saying we need to respect UN various decisions that have been made over the years about Palestinian autonomy. So that there's definitely been friction over that.
So there's a lot of people who would argue that Putin is just another global actor. And we've just talked about people not believing in that Trump is a savior.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a small chance that you're guilty of believing that Trump is the good guy when actually he's just another
Putin.
gangster? Yeah, Putin. Sorry.
Putin. Yeah.
That Putin is just another gangster at the table. I've read a lot. He's still, if you look at the BRICS, they're pushing all the UN Agenda 2030 sustainability goals.
Yeah.
They pushed the vaccine passport. Digital IDs are coming out full on. 5G. There's nothing really different that what they're doing than what's happening in the UN and the West.
Yeah.
There's some superficial wokeism, bit of this, but fundamentally the direction is kind of similar.
Yeah.
Digital currency?
No. So first thing to say, and everybody should understand this, every elite everywhere is always going to be interested in tools of control over their population. So
can we not use the word elite?
Okay. Every predator class is going to be interested in tools of control over their respective population everywhere for all time throughout history. I don't see that changing unless you're in a kind of Amish kind of community somewhere maybe it's different. But in the political world, in the rest of the world, the predator class is going to want to control their domestic population. So, you know, of course, everybody's going to be interested in programmable digital currency, digital ID, etc., etc. And so the question we've got now is, what are the sort of geopolitical configurations of those predator classes? And there, I do think Putin has split from the sort of Washington Anglo-American unified predator class. And I've written about this. I think he did this in about 2003, because Putin was meant to be replaced by a guy called Mikhail Khodorkovsky. And Mikhail Khodorkovsky has, and still has, links not very clear, but they are very clear, but they're never spoken about. He has links back to the Rothschild family, and he also had links to Henry Kissinger. And Putin I can't say this, but de facto Putin arrested that guy a few months after he formed a foundation with Kissinger and with Rothschild. In September 2002, that foundation was formed in the UK, and a few months later, Khodorkovsky's arrested. And I think that was a significant event, and I think that was the point at which Putin said, you're not having your guy running Russia for your benefit. I'm staying, and your guy's going to jail. And I think that was a big moment that's not really been reported about.
But I still think it's just gangster infighting.
It always is. I'm not going to. No. Of course it is. It's, you know, I would say at the end of the day, the message was Russian assets will be reserved for Russian oligarchs. They're not going to be shared or taken away by globalist oligarchs. And I think it was a gangster fight in that sense. I'm not denying it. And Putin has quite often referred to his disgust at people who will go to the top table but be treated as slaves, but at the top table in Washington, they will sort of debase themselves. I know exactly who he's talking about. They will debase themselves provided they're allowed in the room of the real top oligarch, you know, the real globalists, basically. And I think he never will debate, or at least he's suggesting he will never debase himself in that way, and they will have a Russian nationalist oligarchy.
Like, who's he talking about?
I think there he's talking about Khodorkovsky. That's probably fair enough to say that. And Khodorkovsky's made a number of like serious threats against Russia and against Putin. I would think there's another oligarch in Ukraine who he's talking about, a guy called Pinchuk, who's very closely tied in with all the Clintons and all of that business in Washington. So that could be another guy he's referring to.
God, you know what? It's just one big club and we ain't in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I'm glad. I mean, you know, I'd like to have the private jet and fly to my island. But as time goes on, you start to think maybe it's probably a good idea that you're not necessarily in that club.
Yeah, I'd hate that club. You know, it's funny. So, my friend Ian McDermott took me shooting yesterday. I'm a probationary member of a firearms club now. It's so much fun. It's great.
Yeah.
Shooting shotguns and things at targets and everything.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know, I got invited to this hunt, pheasant hunt or whatever. He goes, like, the guy sent me a picture of what it's like. He went, everyone there is wearing tweed, and he goes, I'm gonna have to spend a ton of money so I look the part.
Yeah.
And then walking around with people going, yeah. And he goes, I'd rather come here in the mud with troopers, they're all ex-army.
Yeah.
And just shoot.
Blast away. He goes, I'm not that kind of guy. I went, neither am I. Yeah. I would hate to be in that company. Yeah. Now, if we hate to be in that kind of company, can you imagine being with a bunch of globalists? Yeah.
What would we talk about?
Yeah.
It'd be horrible. Oh, yeah, I think we should call 1 billion people this next decade. What do you think? I'm like, well, yeah, maybe 2 billion. 2.
Like, my only one. Yeah.
I think we should roll out another gene therapy and make sure everybody's infertile. Ha, ha, ha. You know what? What would you talk about with these globalists? You know, what's the latest insect burger like? Let's roll that out. Ha ha ha. How many people have you abused this year? How many children have you drunk their blood? You know what I mean? What the hell would you talk about with these people? No thanks.
Yeah.
No. I'd rather hang out with you, mate.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've also chosen a side, but I could understand the attraction of the billionaire club. Why not? But as time goes on, you realize a lot of the downside. And by the way, I know I worked for a guy who was very wealthy, who was a great guy, who I liked a lot. So it's not like, as far as I can understand, it's not 100% of these guys are also psychopaths and Malthusians.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear something really bizarre?
Yeah, go on.
Oh, I don't know how much I can. It's not private. I mean, I had a chat with someone who's in the Rockefeller family just recently. And like almost everything they said, I was agreeing with.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and they were saying how there's a lot of bad stuff going on. The governments are being taken over. And I was like, I stopped and went, sorry, excuse me. A lot of people think that it's your family that's part of all of this.
Yeah.
And is behind a lot of this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, well, kind of, that person did something that wasn't right, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not that simple.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what about your foundation? The foundation is not really run by the family anymore.
Yeah.
It's other people who run it.
Yeah.
And I just suddenly thought maybe there's layers and layers of this that we just don't know about.
Almost certainly.
You think it's the Rockefeller. Maybe they're just being put as a front and their name is being used while people are behind it.
Yeah.
I think the real bad people, you don't actually even know their names.
I think you're right. And I think also you're right that there's infighting there. They're cliques. They're bound to be cliques. Wherever people get together, they form cliques and they fight amongst each other. So in that famous book that nobody's read because it's too long, Carol Quigley, he talks about the Japanese oligarchy. I think that is, for me, the best ever analysis I've ever seen of the Japanese oligarchy. And it was about the turn of the century, the 1900s. And he goes through the different families and how they fought each other and how control of the army flipped from one to the other, and they stole the control of the army, but the other guys stole the navy. And it's fascinating.
Wow.
It goes into
like
that.
these big families like Mitsubishi.
There were four big families.
Fuji.
Yeah, and they were fighting, and there was one was dominant, and the dominance was fought over, and it's fascinating. And I think, to me, that's a more realistic view of oligarchy, that there's a lot of factions and they fight each other, but ultimately they have a common goal, which is abusing us in the general populace. That sucking money and wealth and power to them is their common objective.
Right, before we talk about Bitcoin, very quickly, you were saying something to me as we were walking over to the studio. You're like, oh, I've never had a poorer return for the time invested and work that I've put in. Can you just, I think that's, I've messed up what you said. What were you saying?
Well, in my working career, I've never earned less money per unit of effort as I have done doing this kind of, social media, whatever you want to call it. But really, it was warning people from 2020, look, this is not what's written on the tin. COVID is not what's written on the tin. This is a psyop. A large element of everything we're doing is a psyop. The vaccine is not safe. It hasn't been tested properly. I had those interviews with Bhakti. We spoke to Professor Fenton and all kinds of Professor Livermore, all kinds of other people, and said, look, this thing is, essentially we said, do not take this thing. And we got obviously punished for doing that, all kinds of videos deleted and what have you. But that went into then, more social media, warning generally about government overreach and saying, look, your liberty generally is being taken away. It's not just vaccination. And that effort has involved a huge amount of work. And the money I've earned from that is minuscule, certainly compared to being in the system. I would literally earn 100 times more in the system than doing what I'm doing now.
What was your job in the system?
I was in various kind of investment funds, but the last job I did was in a very, very big pension fund, where I did something called corporate governance, where you're looking at the management of companies and trying to work out, is it going the way it should be? So then that also involves then you look for links between executive management, board members. Where did this board member come from? Why is he there? Is there some stuff going on around the back door somewhere? are there affiliated suppliers? Is money being sucked out? All of those kind of questions is what I dealt with.
So like investigative stuff.
When I was at the very big one, it was a volume business. I think we had somewhere about 3,000 equity positions. So you're just dealing with volume. It's like a factory machine. You've got to vote in 3,000 annual general meetings. So you just that was more of a conveyor belt. But when I worked in a hedge fund, it was exactly about investigation. And if we saw something that went wrong, the other side would call it green mailing, where you litigate your way out of a position. The other side's taking money out through the back door, so they won't buy you out. So you force them to buy you out through green mailing, and that is investigation.
So I was talking to Jeremy Warfare on his show this morning, and he was saying, Ahmed, you know what? I used to work in the newspaper. I was an illustrator, cartoonist, all that kind of stuff, and he lost his jobs because of what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, actually, even if he could go back, he wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because he loves what he's doing now.
Yeah.
And the same is with me, actually. I was earning a lot more as a surgeon. You've seen my house. You've seen, where my doors are literally falling apart, my leaky roof. Although that's going to get fixed soon. I wouldn't want to go back to my old career. If it meant I couldn't do this anymore. I love doing what I'm doing. I love shining the light on all that's wrong, and I hope that actually it will make a difference over time and will limit the amount of damage that these evil predator class will do to us. What about you? Could you go back to your old life and do your other old job? Like you said, it doesn't pay to do this. We were talking about how I was telling you how many subscribers I'd lost, and because everyone's poor, no one's got money.
Yeah.
The people are pensioners, people are unemployed. A lot of people like that supporting me, and they're struggling.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So, do you ever think, okay, I'll go back to that world and maybe do this as a hobby? Or what drives you to do what you're doing, and the cost sacrifice that you're making in the meantime?
I couldn't do exactly that job I did before. It's too close to the sort of Agenda 2030. It was very much the implementation of Agenda 2030 is what I did.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's no way in the world I could bite my tongue and go and do that again.
It's like me going into a vaccine center. It's like, it's just not happening.
It's not going to happen. But there's bits of work I could do around it. So I was focused on governance, which is separate from the more Agenda 2030 stuff. So there's bits of paid work I could do back in the system around governance that would pay the bills in a much more effective way than what I'm doing now. And for me, it's slightly upsetting. I think both of us really, which we're giving people the fishing rod. We're not here nitpicking like, politics is about nitpicking personalities over irrelevant tweets and mudslinging. We don't do that. We're trying to explain to people like, this is the system. This is how it works. This is the role of psyops. This is how the oligarchy funds everything. This is how the money moves around the machine, and we're trying to literally giving people the tools to understand for themselves. And that is not a well-paid occupation, although it's a very difficult occupation to do that, to actually do the research and do it credibly. We're not in the aliens came down and waved 6G at all of us and we're all zombies. We're not in. That may be even true, but it's not. You can't provide the evidence to prove it. You can't convince someone of it. Therefore, is it worth anything? And even that side of our dissident movement gets more somehow traction, it feels like, than we do with like research-based serious stuff. That's very frustrating that it's not paid.
Do you know what I think it is? I think the best way to get through to people is stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not data,
100%.
not data, not facts, not bar graphs and charts.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm afraid that doesn't cut through. Data, objective, truth doesn't cut like a story does.
No, that's
personal connection.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned we need to focus on, spinning the tail, because that's what they're very good at doing.
Yeah,
they didn't sell COVID on true reality and facts and figures, because if it was, then there was no pandemic.
Right.
They sold it on fear and a narrative, images, and it was just play. It was
emotional manipulation all the way.
Clapping your pots and pans, the dancing nurses, stand by and protect the NHS. It's all just. So we need to be smart.
Yeah.
We need to think. But the problem is, it means it's a dirty art.
Yeah.
It's a black magic. It's like casting a spell on people.
Yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable. I just feel like I just want to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I don't want to manipulate people to
Yeah.
wake them up. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. I had exactly the same conversation with David Curtin a few days ago. Was do the ends justify the means? And if your end is to like wake people up and get them out of this like oppressive society that we're in, does it make sense that the means you use are manipulating people through social media, through hitting their hot buttons, through astroturfing, through buying bots, through all the
What's
BS?
astroturfing?
Astroturfing is where you create a lot of fake accounts that look like individual people. And then those people all say the same thing on the same day. And it gives a user of the social media the impression that there's this groundswell. And Reform have used this saying, let's break the two-party system. There was one day like hundreds of people who all said exactly the same thing on the same day. That's kind of astroturfing. It just gives the impression that there's this whole mass movement, which is probably at best run by a few activists within the party, but at worst it could be a whole bunch of fake bot accounts doing that. So,
and then once you get the momentum,
the
going,
ball rolling,
then everybody else jumps in.
Exactly, it's crowd psychology. So for us, do we do that? It probably works. It works very well. But the means then conflict with your ends, and because your ends are to try and give people some truth. So for us, maybe it's out of the question doing all of that.
Well, just hearing that, I just feel repulsed by that. Like the idea of manipulating people and doing something that's fake, inherently fake in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's so widespread. There's a word for it. I mean, that's how. This is not a one-off. No one's ever done this. They literally had to create a word, astroturfing, to explain this.
This is like my dad. So when my dad came over from Pakistan in the late 60s, he was talking about how he worked hard in the shipyards, ice cream van, markets. And then he said there was a wave of immigrants that came then in the 70s. And what they did, they weren't working hard like him. They got some like cash and carries or whatever and burnt them down. And he said it was all insurance fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And they would take all the goods out, burn it down, say, oh, they had all this billions, millions of pounds worth in the good. And they were all these suddenly, rich Pakistani families, millionaire families. And my dad would turn around to me and goes, they got all their money based on lies and fraud. And some of them went into the political world. Some of them get, then they get good reputation as philanthropy and helping out, and doing good deeds and being prominent in their mosque and community and society. And then and I was like, criminals, criminals. And he goes, but I never did that. And I'll never be rich like them. But at least when I meet my maker, I know I'm honest and I did the right thing. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes down to. You and I will never be Joe Rogans or Russell Brands. Yeah. We're not taking the money, we're not taking the crap, but at least we can live with ourselves. Yeah, yeah.
Well, again, that's where, I mean, it doesn't need to be Christianity, but that's where the Christian mindset comes in, because your end point is not the $10 million, dollar house or the, $100 million pension pot. It's, you're going to meet your maker. And at that point, none of that stuff's relevant. And you're going to have to explain what you've done, essentially. You'll be judged on your whole life by your maker, who you can't bullshit. And it's a different mindset. And it's a much better mindset for building a society on than the non-religious mindset, which is here and now as much as you can until it's over, when you're dead and there's nothing more. So it's, Christianity is good because it even if you kind of don't believe it, it has a lot of utility for building a good society. It's also
Agreed.
It's also very important for continuing the race, which is our number one really sole duty. It's about go forth and multiply, men plus women, and that's been attacked as well. So
100%.
That's why you're seeing this collapse in.
Do you know, I did a podcast with David Thunder, and it came out yesterday. And he talks about the existential crisis, that we don't have enough replacement.
Yeah.
There's not enough people to replace the current population. And he goes, if it carries on this rate, in a few decades, if not like a century, we'll go extinct.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. Like he goes, the replacement numbers, like most countries in the world are not meeting them.
No.
Our populations are,
Shrinking.
peaked and now shrinking.
Yeah.
And you wonder whether it's a combination of cultural values, medical, health, like infertility's up.
Yeah.
If we as a species, the way our sperm count is declining, if this was any other species, like it would be on the endangered list. Like it'd be like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Our sperm counts are rock bottom.
Yeah.
Fertility is going down.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, people are saying, "Oh, I don't want to have kids. There's too many people on the planet already."
Yeah.
It's the most ungodly thing.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I believe that the more people there are, the better.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's too many people on this planet.
Yeah, nor do I.
It's Malthusian.
Yeah, it's totally Malthusian.
It's evil.
Again, it's the inversion of Christianity. Christianity says go forth and multiply, literally.
But Malthusian Malthus was a
reverend, yeah. But
he was a priest.
Yeah, but
like,
some of these guys go off piste.
I'm just saying, he was a Christian priest.
Yeah, I've been reading of what some rabbi I've been looking at. He's on for legalizing prostitution.
What?
Gay marriage, no problem. It's like, hang on, you're a rabbi. I mean,
but isn't Pornhub run by a rabbi?
It might be.
I thought Pornhub was.
It could be. It could be.
A rabbi.
Well, the rabbi, what's his name, Shmuley, the famous guy. He's definitely running some kind of sex toy or something business. So it's all very weird.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just check. A rabbi is overseeing Pornhub.
Yeah.
Yeah, Solomon Friedman.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. So these people can go very far off piste at times. So you're right. The Reverend Malthusian guy was a reverend, but that's totally an inversion of biblical teaching. So what kind of reverend is he?
Solomon Friedman is on a mission to save Pornhub.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, what's going on?
But they invert all of this stuff and they make it sound credible. Like the euthanasia bill was also all about helping people and blah, blah, blah. To my mind,
it's always done like that.
Yeah.
It's the devil. It's literally like the devil.
It's literally like the devil. But at the end of the day, I think what it did was corporatize killing people. So stuff that would go on maybe in the quiet somewhere, maybe a doctor would slip something to help a patient end their lives. You can do that out in the open and make money doing it. That's the big change. It can be corporatized. You can make those pods. You can sell those pods. It's all nice and legal. I think that was that legislation was all about. And it was all funded. None of these initiatives ever come from the ground up. They always come from a deep pocket, top down, all of them. And I traced the money behind that legislation. You can see
it's like everything, like you said, the money's. Sorry, finish off what you're saying.
Yeah.
The money, the legislation. What? Sorry.
Well, there's a Substack called Death Incorporated, and that traces all of the money through to the voting, through to the actual MP Kim Ledbetter, who pushed for this thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But like, there's always money behind it. Like,
always.
All these oligarchs that we see, the technocrats.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk is not a self-made man.
No.
I think his family's got mining interests in Namibia. Emerald mines or whatever. He's got defense, military contracts. They've all got family or relatives in the intelligence.
Yeah.
These people, I don't think they just come out of nowhere.
No, they
your
don't.
Bezos, your Zuckerbergs, your Gates.
Yeah.
They're
Well, I mean,
they're backed.
Yeah, you will talk to Patrick Wood, who's an expert on technocracy, but Elon Musk is the grandson of one of the main founders of technocracy in the US. Or
Was it
Canada?
It was Canada.
Yeah, Joshua, somebody or another. And of course, they came up with this technate. America plus Canada plus Greenland is a 1930s idea from technocracy. That is the technate. And Musk is the grandson of that guy. And all of a sudden, Trump has this idea. That's a lot of coincidences right there,
Wow.
So, yeah, these people never come from nowhere. There's always some kind of history somewhere.
Oh, man. Right, dude. Have we covered everything? Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. I also worry about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? The white paper. It looks like some NSA, CIA operation.
Yeah.
They've played the long game.
Yeah.
It's all about, there's the cool curve. So you have your people right at the front who are leading the trailblazers, and they're looked at as being weird and fringe.
Yeah.
But then you get the early adopters, it suddenly becomes cool, then it becomes mainstream, and then you got the laggards.
Yeah.
Right. I think the Bitcoin was like that. It was to get people into cryptocurrency, normalize this electronic thing. Now there's like 100,000 cryptos out there.
Yeah.
And then what they'll say is, oh, you know what? It's not safe. It needs to be better regulated. Let's get, official government digital crypto in.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Bitcoin, you can't do fast transactions.
Yeah.
It's very energy hungry.
Yeah.
And it's not there's no privacy. It's all blockchain. You can see where transactions are made.
Yeah.
It's not money.
Yeah.
It's now a commodity. It's like asset that's being traded.
Yeah.
There's something really weird about Bitcoin I've got concerns about. And when it's being pushed by people like Elon and other people and, even Trump, you just think, what is going on here?
Yeah.
The Dogecoin and God knows what else.
Yeah. Well, before that, I just wanted to say one more thing. You were, about the issues we've covered. One big thing is worth mentioning is the structure of business has changed a lot. You were saying about Elon Musk. So the dominant industries now are big tech and pharma, essentially. So if a long time ago, important industries were consumer facing, so consumer discretionary, consumer staples, they rely on individuals and they have to trade with those individuals. If you look at big tech, it's selling your data. So it's a business to business operation. The people are the commodity that's being sold. And all it needs is cooperation with governments. So big tech will fully, they were literally in bed with government during the whole censorship operation. See, and then you have Musk specifically. I think he's taken somewhere about $20 billion into SpaceX. So SpaceX is the ultimate, government plus business operation. And then lastly, you've got Palantir behind the scenes through J.D. Vance. That's another in bed with the government. The government started it. Thiel, so the government started it. Then they got big. Then they get half their revenue from governments. That's what's going on. It's that fusion,
public-private partnership,
fusion of government and business. So, they have moved away from having to deal with the population all the time. All they need to do now is to deal with the government. And pharma is, of course, the ultimate. You push the thing through the regulator, you get added to the schedule, you're home and dry. And then if you get a liability waiver as well, hey, we can injure people left, right, and center, and we're immune. So that's the new game in town. It's
mate, this is exactly what I've been saying. So in the past, Big Pharma sent their pretty young girl rep around to every single hospital department, every consultant saying, oh, can you please prescribe Losec? Can you please prescribe this drug? Now they're like, screw that.
One signature.
Let's just get the people right at the top.
Yeah.
Pass it through. It's not even just one person. It is like the nice guidelines. There'll be a committee. Yeah. There'll be a few professors. Yeah. There'll be the Ministry of Health, the medical regulators. Buy all those guys up, and then boom, hundreds of thousands of doctors around the world will be prescribing this.
Yeah.
You don't need that pretty young rep anymore.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say, it's the centralization of corruption.
Yeah.
Why? And it's so much more efficient. Why go one-to-one corrupting everybody, corrupting all your doctors, when you can go right to the top and they'll whip everybody into shape, whip everyone into line.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You have to give it to them. It's pretty goddamn smart, mate.
Yeah, but it's also the way society has changed a bit. You can never be 100% sure what's a conspiracy and what's an organic movement that they understand and they use to their advantage. So, society has gone in that way through technology. Technology is inherently centralized. So, unfortunately, bad people have captured the center of that centralized technology, and they will use it to oppress us, essentially. And even with the rep going to the doctors, it's still never an individual to a company. That's where you've got maximum power. Where you're an individual, you're waking up one day and saying, I want this pill. So even with the doctors, you've got a layer who were influenced, like prescribe this. So even there, it's not the individual citizen at the end of the day making the purchase choice. That's the ultimate best solution. But, from there it goes to, as you said, at least they've got a rep who has to run around a lot of doctors who have to be convinced, to, a handful of guys, add it to the schedule, give me immunity, job done. I'm just going to print money on this.
Right, listen, we need to wrap up.
Okay.
It's time for lunch.
Good.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Are you hungry?
Yeah, it's been intense discussion, so.
Right. Are we going to leave on a positive note? Are you going to give any positivity? Are you going to give anybody some it can't all be all doom and gloom?
I definitely not doom and gloom guy. There's a couple of predictions. There's something I recommend everyone reads as a short paper by a guy called Sir John Glubb, and he defines kind of what looks like where we are now as the age of decadence. So it's high immigration, high dependency on the state, and loss of religious faith, which, like, wow, that's like, if I had to classify where we are now, I would use
What's his name?
Sir John Glubb.
All right. Okay.
Glubb, and he's written a short paper. He's dead now. He wrote the paper in the mid-70s, The Fate of Empires.
So he's not coming on the podcast.
He's not coming on the podcast, but he's left you his paper, which is a good contribution as well. And he's very clear that, eventually the love of money recedes and religious faith again begins to have sway over the population, and then a new era of growth can set in.
Is it the book The Fate of Empires and Search for Survival?
Exactly.
That's the book, yeah?
Yeah, and it's available as a PDF, and it's not very long. I think it's very, very good. And he has the positive end message that, look, this stuff goes in cycles. You get to this age of decadence.
I found it.
And then eventually...
It's 26 pages.
Yeah, it's very short.
Oh, I'm going to read it. I'll put a link up.
Yeah, should do. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's I like it a lot. And also, so eventually there will be a recovery. We'll kind of sober up a bit, and we can have another era of growth and positive development. But it'll take a long time to get there.
I hope so. Right. Okay. Listen, my question. You're on your deathbed. And I used to say, oh, don't worry. It's many years from now. I'm going to stop saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Milligan made a good point. It could be next week, mate.
Mm-hmm.
You could be dead next week, or you could be dying next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not scared of death anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but I'm not.
Not particularly.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm really not.
I say that now, but maybe when I'm actually in the bed, I'd probably be terrified. But not now.
I'm not. You know what's funny? I've met quite a few religious people, including my dad, who were terrified of death.
Mm-hmm.
And right until the last minute, my dad was terrified of death. And I was like, Dad, but you believe in God and you talk about God all your life, and now you're going to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
What are you scared of?
Mm-hmm.
But he was still scared.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that. Death is funny. What I'm trying to say is death is a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
It gets people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a culture of being scared of death. When I'm not, because I realize that this existence, this reality, whatever it is just so temporary, such a blink in the eye of our eternal journey.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of dying.
Yeah.
Anyway, so say you're going to be dying next week. All right?
Yeah.
You're surrounded by your family and your loved ones. Before you pass on and meet your maker,
Yeah.
what words of wisdom are you going to impart on them or reinforce to them?
I could be flippant and say, read my Substack. It's all there. I mean, it's literally all there. Everything, however much is wrong, however much is right. But the best I've been able to come up with sort of solutions, ideas, analysis is literally in that Substack. I couldn't leave anything more than that. I would say to my son, read the one about solutions, because it's all in there in about 3 pages. That's my best effort at telling him what's important in life and what isn't.
Nice. What is your Substack?
Thinking Coalition on Substack.
Okay. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. I love your comments whenever I see them, occasionally on Twitter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can always rely that you've made a good comment. I'll go, yeah.
Someone said it. Thanks.
Someone said something.
Not
nice.
just me.
Yeah. You're always on the money. And I've never really seen anything that I've disagreed, actually. I've never seen anything I'm like, I think the only thing is sometimes I think you might have a little bit more faith in Putin and Russia than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of like, they're all part of that.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
The truth is, I honestly don't know jack.
Yeah, none of us do really, if you're really honest about it. Yeah, we make good guesses, but we can always be wrong, and we are wrong. And you have to be able to just put your hand up. Guys bother me a lot. Like, you got it wrong that Putin was going to invade Ukraine. Yes, I got it wrong. Yeah, along with a lot of other people. Yeah, I was wrong about that. I didn't think he'd do it, but he did it. And yeah, sure, I was wrong about it. So what?
I think it's a good sign when you can admit you're wrong about something.
Yeah.
There's some people who never do that.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Well, I think probably not so many years ago I would have really struggled to say that. But now it's a lot easier because, by the way, I've been right about a lot of other really important stuff. So I can live with one strike from 10 sort of thing.
I think it's important to say you're wrong about something. I think it's really important to apologize and say sorry. There's a lot of people who can't say sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry seems to be a word that's just too much for them. And I think that's also telling. If you can't say sorry, like in a proper, deep, meaningful.
Well, if someone really took my view and then bought a house in, eastern Ukraine next week, I would be sorry for that. That was a best efforts thing. I thought it was true. It turned out to be not true. And, apologies for that if that's the case. I don't believe anyone bought a house in eastern Ukraine based on something I said on a Rumble video. But if they did, then I can apologize.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay, fine. All right, well, listen, Alex, thanks so much for coming around. It's been really nice. And now, let's go. And I think you should come in my car. We'll drive. Because part of the fun is actually just sitting in the car and chatting together.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Great.
I'll drop you back here and you can go home now.
Yeah, good. All right.
And thank you so much once again.
Okay.
Everybody give Alex a follow. All his details will be in the show notes and the Substack. And yeah, he's a good guy doing good work. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.